On November 9th, I released a video that celebrated Halo 2's 20th anniversary and presented one final secret hidden within the Mausoleum Suite of Halo 2's original soundtrack. And since that video, the community has jumped into action to reveal this mystery, but what we weren't expecting is to actually unravel a mystery that we all thought was already solved. So today I want to give you guys the update on what we've discovered. Roll the intro. Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00, and the video in question that I'm referencing here was released a couple of days ago and jumped into the fact that there are in fact two hidden cryptic voices within the Mausoleum Suite of Halo 2's original soundtrack. The first voice is a darker, deeper, more ethereal voice that was decoded many moons ago, and the second voice happens much further on in the Mausoleum Suite and is a more human-pitched voice, still extremely difficult to decipher, and has remained undeciphered until this date, 20 years after the original release of the game. And whilst at this point I don't have any specifics about that second voice, we are making conservative headway in trying to figure out exactly what this voice is, what it's saying, who it belongs to. But one of the more interesting things that have come from this collaborative project is the fact that the first voice may not be who we think it is. Now, as I said, the voice was decoded and what was being said revealed many moons ago. The voice is reversed English at a lower pitch, so when you run that in reverse, you get an English voice saying the following.
I have walked among men and angels for 3,000 years. My time has no end, no beginning, no purpose. I wander the earth, seeking forgiveness for all my horrible crimes against God and man. I live to see death, destruction, and over the light. But the light cannot be extinguished. I live in a prison of my own demise. I am lost in time.
And for all these many years, for damn good reason, we've assumed that the voice speaking is that of Mendicant Bias. Now, to give a little bit of information on the lore here, Mendicant Bias was a Forerunner Contender class Ancilla that betrayed the Forerunners to the Flood. He has a very deep, rich history throughout the Halo universe, and mere moments after the firing of the Halo array, he was defeated at the hands of Offensive Bias. His personality core was splintered into numerous pieces and then was sent to the Ark, where he would be buried beneath the sands upon the Ark, beneath Epitaph Tower, watched over by Offensive Bias himself, and with a single thought: atonement. However, a small fragment of his personality construct that was aboard a Foreigner key ship didn't quite make it to the Ark, and ended up crashing on the planet of Janjur-Kom, the homeworld of the Sanshayum. And after a faction of the Sanshayum left their homeworld and then encountered the Sangheli, the War of Beginnings took place, followed by the Writ of Union and the birth of the Covenant. The key ship that contained Mendicant Bias became the centerpiece for the Covenant Holy City of High Charity. The Anodyne Spirit, the large structure in the center of the city, is a Forerunner key ship still containing a fragment of Mendicant Bias. And at the quote-unquote crowning of the three new prophets, the Prophet of Mercy, Truth, and Regret, the three visited the Forerunner key ship to seek the blessing of Mendicant Bias, of the Holy Oracle, where he highlighted that they had been mistranslating reclamation when in fact it meant reclaimer, the heirs of the Forerunners, humanity. So when we heard this deep ethereal voice speaking within the Mausoleum Suite, and all the lore that followed in regards to Mendicant Bias and where he was during the events of Halo 2,
I'll do what I can to slow the log sequence. Something inside the ship, a presence, fighting back. For a Covenant construct, it's unusually formidable.
particularly when taken in tandem with what is actually being said within that deep voice, we came to the inevitable conclusion that it must be that of Mendicant Bias. It's a deep, powerful voice speaking of horrible crimes against gods and man. Mendicant Bias betrayed the Foreigners to the Flood, and thus also betrayed man, humanity, the heirs of the Foreigners. Time has no end, no beginning, and no purpose. He is a Foreigner Ancilla, an artificial intelligence, so as far as we can tell, is practically immortal, and when one has immortality, the passage of time really has no meaning. The voice speaks of evil over light, but the light cannot be extinguished. The evil could very easily be interpreted as being the Flood, and the light being all sentient life in the galaxy. It speaks of a prison of their own demise, and that they are lost in time. Mendicant Bias is imprisoned in one way or another, either beneath the sands of the Ark or within the Foreigner keyship, and was put there by his own demise, his loss to offensive bias. And the final phrase being, "I am lost in time." Mendicant Bias was created at the time of the Foreigners for a very specific purpose. The Foreigners are now gone, and that purpose has ended. He has quite literally outlived his purpose, his era, his time. So when you lay all of that out, what the voice is saying has some very clear and agreeable parallels with the life and musings of Mendicant Bias. But we're wrong, and this is confirmed as such by Marty himself, as he and Michael Salvatore were the ones who composed this piece of music for Halo 2 back in 2003-2004. Amongst confirming that he remembers word for word what is spoken in the track and confirming that there is in fact something there, he also confirms that any of the Mendicant Bias or Frank O'Connor or Greg Bear related lore has nothing to do with these two voices. That makes sense, because really the first actual mention of the name Mendicant Bias within the Halo universe didn't happen until Halo 3. Yes, Mendicant Bias was hinted towards within Halo 2, but it's quite clear by the words that Cortana uses. For a Covenant construct it's unusually formidable, that there probably wasn't even an idea or conceptualization of it being Mendicant Bias or a Foreigner AI. It could have literally just been that it was a very sophisticated Covenant AI. Mendicant Bias wasn't named until Halo 3 during the Iris advertisement campaign, and then later the Halo 3 terminals. And all of the lore that surrounds Mendicant Bias has been retroactively applied to the things that we know and have been established in the earlier games. So in that regard, even the terminals in Halo 2 Anniversary don't actually directly honour the original lore intentions. But that's not the focus of this video. Now notice when I went over what that voice was speaking, I left out the first line. "I have walked among men and angels for 3,000 years. How does that apply to Mendicant Bias? It doesn't. But the period of time should definitely be something that we focus on here. 3,000 years. What had been around for 3,000 years at that point in the Halo universe? What did we know at that time? Ignoring all subsequent lore that was retroactively applied, what did we know? What we knew were the Covenant existed. And this eerie speech, this deep voice, first speaks within the game when Thel Vadam is being taken to the Mausoleum of the Arbiter. So this voice isn't Mendicant Bias at all. It could in fact be the Arbiters. The walls of the Mausoleum of the Arbiter are lined with pods filled with the bodies of fallen Arbiters. Ignoring all other lore that existed after Halo 2 but was retroactively applied to it, what this voice says within the context of the Arbiters suddenly makes an eerie amount of sense. I have walked among men and angels for 3,000 years. The Covenant, by that time, by the 26th century, had been around for approximately 3,000 years. Time has no end, no beginning, no purpose. Because the Arbiters are dead, so this voice could be considered as being almost the spirit or the soul of the Arbiters. I wandered the earth seeking forgiveness for my horrible crimes against God and man. The title of Arbiter was given to spectacularly failed elites. individuals who brought immense shame to themselves, their bloodline, and the Covenant holy religion, and were only granted pardon from these immense crimes against the gods of the religion and man, or the holy prophets of that religion, upon their death. I live to see death and destruction. The Arbiters would only regain honour by killing and slaying the enemies of the Covenant religion, and then they themselves dying in battle. Their whole purpose was to see death and destruction, evil over the light, but the light cannot be extinguished. Any adversary to the Covenant holy religion would be seen as evil over light, but the light, the religion itself, the gods, the promise of the great journey, cannot be extinguished. I live in a prison of my own demise. This could be on multiple levels. One, the armour of the Arbiters themselves could be viewed upon as a prison of their own demise. Their very failure gave them the title of Arbiter and the shroud of the Arbiter's armour. It could also mean a prison in regards to the actions they have to perform in order to regain honour. It is a prison to have to just slay and kill and see death and destruction until they themselves die. And even further than that, it could be that death itself is the prison of their own demise, and that their bodies are stored within caskets that line the walls of the Mausoleum of the Arbiter, each their own separate prison on display to all who observe them, meaning even in death their shame doesn't truly end. I am lost in time because again, they are dead, and due to their enduring shame, cannot move on to the elite's version of the afterlife. They are effectively stuck in the Sangheili equivalent of limbo. And when you pace it out like that, it makes more sense that this deep voice is in fact almost the collective souls of the Arbiters speaking out to all who would listen, rather than the ruminations of an entrapped foreigner Ancilla lamenting on his betrayal of his creators. And yes, lots of lore came into place shortly thereafter that suggested that there may have only been a few Arbiters that actually were crowned, so to speak, during the Human Covenant War, and that the title of Arbiter was actually a position of honour that the Sangheili once held, but was manipulated into a mark of shame by the prophets, which then wouldn't justify why there were walls lined with so many crypts of fallen Arbiters. But again, all of that lore was applied later. It came about much, much later and retroactively applied to the earlier lore. And as if you need any further evidence that this is the case, the voice itself is English spoke backwards. And in Halo CE, how did the elite speak?
What? Go! There's no solid, stay low, soldier. There's no snarls, Navino. Don't even try it, soldier. Regroup.
The elite spoke English in reverse. A relatively easy way of creating an alien-esque language, but what can be wholeheartedly identified as being the elite's language, the Sangheili language, which just so happens to be the inherited language of the Covenant. And with the cut content that's since been revealed that was happening around the time of Halo 2, humans were intended as being the actual Forerunners. Why would we speak our own language backwards? We wouldn't, so it's not the Forerunner language. So why would Mendicant Bias be speaking it? He wouldn't, because it's all retroactively applied from later lore retcons. So the deep voice from the start of the Mausoleum Suite that we hear in Halo 2 isn't Mendicant Bias. It never has been Mendicant Bias. One, it is either an individual or the assembled souls of the fallen Arbiters speaking about their failures. Or it is a voice that actually does speak out from within the Mausoleum of the Arbiter, within High Charity, thus meaning it was constructed by the prophets as something of an epitaph to the Arbiters, which puts them in perpetual shame even after their deaths. And that is more or less the big revelation that we've had so far with the Mausoleum Suite voices. I am now immensely confident in saying that the deep voice at the start of the Mausoleum Suite was never Mendicant Bias, but is in fact either directed at or is the Arbiters as a collective. And the second voice further on in the Mausoleum Suite we're still working on, but again stands to reason that it has nothing to do with Mendicant Bias or Offensive Bias or any of the lore that comes after Halo 2. So we have some interesting leads in that regard. If you want to help out and help us decipher what this second voice is saying, there is a link down below to the original audio file, as well as a link to the Discord where this is being discussed and worked on. I genuinely can't tell you how excited I am that even 20 years later, Halo 2 is still giving us these little mysteries and nuggets of lore. It's great to see the community come together and to see so many people dedicating their resources, time and energy into figuring this out. So, until next time. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, consider hitting the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss out on future content, and hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. It really does help the channel out significantly. Feel free to pop a comment below on anything you'd like me to cover next, and before signing off I just want to give a shout to my Patreon supporters, Spartan10148, my singular contender class ancilla, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, the metarchs of my facility, Sylphia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan 1029 and Chris Allen, my dutiful monitors, Darian, Legion, Labrat, Spartan 137, Chris, Element 0, J3, Mr. Keys, Gunslinger Cult, Evermore's Personal Devil, Scion Esports and Saber, my diligent sub-monitors, my dominating fleet of Strato Sentinels, and my loyal enforcers, and all other patrons who continue to support the channel. I can't thank you guys enough. Big props to my Tier 0 YouTube members, Spartan 137, Talia, Fenrir, Bornstella and Jimbo, and all other YouTube members keeping the installation running on that glorious vacuum energy. And if you really love what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel via the links in the description. Much love, take it easy, and find peace in the domain.